Okay, in this video we're going to be checking out the Hobbymate D6 Duo Pro Smart Charger, and this is a dual channel smart charger, pretty similar in features and style and everything to one of my most favorite chargers of all time, the iSDT D2. And largely the differences, well, basically they're kind of similar. There's not a whole lot of differences between the two, except that I would say that the Hobbymate here on the left is probably like an upgraded version of the D2 with a few extra features and more power. The biggest differentiating factor between these two chargers is that the iSDT can only go up to 12 amps per channel. So that's the most that you could, most amperage that you could charge at for your batteries. And that is kind of a limiting factor if you want to charge a lot of batteries, if you're using, say, for example, a parallel charging board, which, if you're wondering, the Hobbymate also can work with parallel charging boards as well. But now the new one here, the Hobbymate, does go up to 15 amps, so you get a little bit more on the upper side in terms of charging. You can probably charge a little bit faster or charge more batteries with this charger. The other thing that is different is that the Hobbymate has a wireless charging feature here on top, so you can put your phone on top of here and wirelessly charge your phone or some other a device that uses the wireless charging protocol. I'm not so sure if that's a great selling feature or one that I would buy this for necessarily, but it's included if you want it, and I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. The other thing that is different is here on the back. While the iSDT can charge via AC only, which the Hobbymate can as well, you can see here that the Hobbymate can now charge via a DC, so you can plug in a battery between 6.5 volts to 30 volts, and you can charge in the field. Now, a lot of the other iSDT chargers can charge in the field via DC, but this one doesn't, and I think that was one of the features that I thought was missing that I wish this one had, because I can't take this out in the field. It only can charge this via AC. But this one you could take out in the field if you wanted to, if you're going to be flying for a full day, for example, and want to charge in the field with this dual charger. You can do that with this DC input. So in terms of what comes in the box, of course, you get the charger itself. You get a little quick start guide here. Basically, has like specifications. You can read that if you would like, and then just give you a diagram on what all the ports are, as well as some brief instructions. The other side is in Chinese, so it's the same as the front. And then you get a power cord here for plugging in via AC. If you are in a non-US country, you'll probably need an adapter, because this is the cord that it comes in. It's a US plug. I do wish the cable was a little bit longer. It's only, I think it's only about 3 or 4 feet. So that's one of the downsides about the cable, is it's a little bit too short, but that's not a big deal. And taking a quick look around the charger itself in the front, of course, you got the 2 channels, 1 and 2, XT60 output here for your battery, as well as your balance lead. And the difference here between this charger and the iSDT is that the balance plug is flipped over. So on the iSDT, the negative is here on the left, and then over here on the Hobbymate, it is on the right. So you have to be careful as to if you're using if you're used to the iSDT. I don't think it'll plug in because it's keyed, but if you do try, you might have, and successfully, you might get a reverse polarity situation, and might be in some serious trouble. So just be aware that the negative on the iSDT is over here on the left, whereas on the Hobbymate it's over here on the right for both channels. So that is one major difference, and something you should be aware of if you're used to the iSDT system. You want to make sure your balance plug is plugged in correctly. Over here on this side there's nothing, and on the back, of course, you got your fan, your AC input 100 to 40 volts, and your DC input of 6.5 to 30 volts. And then here on the right you have a micro USB port for doing your firmware updates, and you have a 5 volt 2.1 amp output for charging up USB devices. Now on the iSDT you have the same USB port, but the firmware update port is this audio jack, and you'll need either to make your own audio jack like I did in a previous video, or you have to buy the iSDT adapter to plug into your computer to do firmware updates. So that is another downside of this older model. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 6S LiPo to power it up from a really large LiPo battery. You get the startup screen, and you can hear the fan going. Pretty much the fan goes on all the time. On the iSDT, the fan only comes on when you're charging and when it's on standby, and after the internals have cooled down, the fan does turn off. So if you're using this constantly in a quiet room, beware that the fan is pretty much on all the time. I haven't seen the fan turn off in any of the charge cycles that I've been using this, so something that you might want to be aware of. You start off here with the two split screens here, and by the way, the screen here is bigger on the Hobbymate versus the iSDT. Let's see if I'm not sure if you can really see that, but it's about 2.2 inches on the iSDT and it's 2.8 inches on the Hobbymate. So if you happen to like the larger screen, then you're going to like the Hobbymate better. Now, the interface is fairly similar. It's not exactly the same. Obviously, they've gone to some different kind of firmware here, but you know, it does give you some similar information to the iSDT. So if you're used to that, you're going to be used to this one. You're going to have an idea what's going on. There's only a single button here for switching your channels. So you single press, you'll get channel 1. You'll see the channel 1 over here. Another press, you get channel 2, and the third press, you get the split screen, and it'll cycle between each one for each press. The information you get here, you get the, I think this is the voltage of the battery, milliamp hours here. Actually, that's the voltage of the battery here. This is the maximum voltage here, 22.6, I think it's for 6S. And then if you want to get into the settings for the charger, you're going to use this dial here, and you're going to long press the dial to get to the settings. And these are the charger settings. You got, these are the ones that are listed: task parameters, system parameters, channel 1, channel 2 calibrations, system self-checking, factory settings, and system info. So let's go and dive into this a little bit here. Under system parameters, you can change your language, maximum input power, minimum input voltage. So here you probably want to change this. If you're plugging, for example, a 6S LiPo here, and you drain that to 6.5 volts, that's gonna puff the battery. So a minimum voltage on a 6S here, you don't want to go below 3 volts per cell. So that's probably gonna, you know, I'll be using 6S, so I'm going to change that to minimum 18 volts. Here's the backlight. You probably want to leave that on high. If you change that to low, it's, you can see, barely visible here. This is the wireless charge feature. You can turn it on or off. I'm going to leave it on so I can demonstrate that a little bit later. This is the volume. I turned it to low because high is really loud, so low is going to be good enough for most situations. The completion tone here is when the charge completes, it'll beep and tell you that it's done. If you change that to single, it'll just beep once, and if you happen to miss it, then you won't know that it's still charging. So I'm going to leave that as a repeat so that it'll keep annoying you, so that you can turn that off and disconnect the battery. You can change your device name here if you want. I'll just leave that alone. Let's go back. Here under task parameters, there's a few more things here for each charging task. You can change the safety timer. Here it's set for 2400 minutes. I think that's when it'll actually shut off if you happen to forget that something's charging. I think that's probably, yeah, that's the maximum, 2400. That's probably going to be too much, so I'm going to lower that. And the lowest is 3 minutes, so that sounds pretty good. I'm going to set mine to 3 minutes. Max capacity of, that's how many milliamp hours will be pumped into the battery until it stops. I probably should reduce that. 999,000, that's huge. So we'll just drop that down. I think the biggest battery that I have is probably like 3,000 milliamps, so I know that I'll never exceed that. And this is the end current here. This is 10% of the whatever the max current setting is. That's probably going to be okay. So like, for example, if you charging at 2 amps, at the very end it'll drop down to 0.2 amps, so that should be fine. This is the trickle charge feature. I'm probably going to turn that off because you probably only use that for like nickel metal hydride batteries. If you're charging mostly lithium ion, you probably want to turn that off. So in order to do the calibrations, I think you need to plug in a battery. Okay, so I got a battery plugged in on channel 1, and see what kind of calibration we can do here. So it looks like you have to put this code in to unlock the calibration. I think I'm going to pass on this because this looks like it's going to take a while, so I'll just exit out of here. Okay, for this setting here for system self-check, that's what happens when you actually plug in power for the first time. It does a self-check, but you can actually run another one if you want later. Okay, so it ran a self-check there and no errors were produced. If you want to reset the factory settings here, you can click on this. I'm going to leave it alone. And then over here under system info, it shows you the latest firmware versions and the serial number for the charger. Obviously, if you update the firmware, then these numbers will change. Okay, so I'm going to plug in a LiPo here so we can show you an example of this charger at work when it's charging a battery. We'll plug in the main lead and then the balance lead. Okay, so now we can see that here on channel 1 we have the voltage, that's the current voltage of the battery, and you can see the range of the cells. It's going from 3.9 to 3.94. If we go into the channel itself, then we can now see the individual cells voltages here for each one. If you want to start charging, I think we just press the dial here, and it brings up the task settings, and under select tasks you can do charge, discharge. There's this thing called discharge external. That's for the external battery that's powering the charger. If you want to discharge that, if you're on AC, that doesn't actually do anything. You can do storage charge, and then there's also balance charge. I think this is one feature that's not on the iSDT. If you're plugging in a battery that is out of balance, and say for example one cell is a lot lower than the other ones, you're going to want to balance it first before you do a full charge. So you can select this one here to actually do a balance charge, and it'll actually balance that one cell that may be lower, bring that up, and then you can go ahead and do a regular charge. So I'm going to do a regular charge here with all the cells that are pretty close to each other. Under here, under battery type, I'm not exactly sure there's that many more options here. There's like smart battery. I don't remember seeing that in the iSDT. There's lithium high voltage, LiPo, lithium ion, lithium iron, and then there's this LIXX. I don't know what that is. And then there's nickel zinc. That one I'm pretty sure isn't on the iSDT. There's lead. That's on the iSDT, as well as NiCad and nickel metal hydride. And then there's this in-a-loop option, although I'm not exactly sure how you would charge an in-a-loop battery. Those will be like, those AAA, AA batteries. You probably would need some sort of an adapter here to charge up those, but those are just basically another form of nickel metal hydride. So maybe there's a specific chemistry for that one that this one recognizes, but that's another one that's available here under battery type. Back out of here. Here under cell voltage, you can, this is another thing that I noticed is different, is you could undercharge it if you want, as low as, let's see here, it goes as low as 4 volts as the final voltage. Obviously 4.2 is where you want to be, or you can go as high as 4.25 volts. So if for whatever reason you want to overcharge it or undercharge it, you can adjust your cell end voltage here and leave it standard as 4.2. Cell count here, it's a 4-cell battery. I'm going to leave that alone. Obviously you could change that if you want, but you probably don't want to do that. It'll auto detect that like the iSDT, so go ahead and leave that alone. And then here is the current setting. So the battery I plugged in here is a 1000 milliamp hour battery. So at 2 amps it will charge at 2C. You probably want to charge at 1C, so you can adjust this down here. It will go as low as 0.1 amps, and I think it's 15 amps is the max. You don't want to do that for this battery. That's like 7C. Probably would damage the battery if you did that. But if you, for example, had a say 15 on a parallel charge board, obviously you can't have that many. Most parallel charge boards can only go up to 6. So if you had 6 of these, so 1,000 milliamp hour batteries on a parallel charge board, it will look like a very large 4-cell 6,000 milliamp hour or 6 amp hour battery. In which case, if you want to charge it 1C, then you could charge it at 6 amps. So you can adjust that to 6 amps here. If you had a parallel charge board with 6 of these on there, and then all the batteries would then charge at a 1C rate if you divide the 6 amps over the 6 batteries. But in this case, I have only one battery in here, so I'm going to adjust that down to 1 amp. And then you can just hit Start Task, and I'll start charging. Here you get your timer for how much time has passed. You get your cell or your battery voltage at 16 volts. It's charging at 1 amps and shows how many milliamp hours are being pumped into the battery, as well as the individual voltages for each cell. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this. So you just press the button here, and then you can adjust the current if you want, and in the middle of the charge, or in case I'm going to go ahead and stop it. So the last thing I want to demonstrate is the wireless charging feature here. And I got my smartphone. This is just a Galaxy Note 8 Samsung phone. You just stick that on top, and then you can see that it initiates the charging. And it says here, let's try that again. It says here it's charging wirelessly, and so it basically is not the fast charging feature. So if you're wondering if this wireless charger supports the fast wireless charging feature, I think that's an advanced feature for Samsung phones. I don't think this particular wireless charger actually supports that. It's just the standard wireless charging. So I think that it's a little bit slower than if you plug it into a wall adapter, like via USB. But it's still fairly fast in terms of charging. I'm not exactly sure how useful this wireless charging feature is for me. I mean, I use this to charge my LiPo batteries for my RC stuff. I don't see a situation where I would actually end up putting my phone on top of here to charge this along with other batteries, because I already have other wireless chargers on elsewhere in my house that I would use, or I would just plug it into my computer or via the wall outlet to the USB. So it's kind of nice to have this feature. I'm not exactly sure how much extra this would cost. I'm not sure if it's really necessary. If they could come up with a version of this charger where this isn't included and maybe save a little bit of money, I don't know how much they could cut the cost down, maybe 10 bucks, 15 bucks. I would actually go for that, because everything else in this charger is really worth it. Now it's $150 for this charger at Amazon and at Hobbycool. That's the website that, or the company that they sell this at. If you buy the charger at the Hobbycool link down below and use the coupon code, you can get 20% off. I'm not exactly sure when that's going to expire. I'm not exactly sure how long that promotion is going to last. But at the time this video has been published, that is currently active. I believe if you order from there, it ships from China or Hong Kong. Obviously, the Amazon link will ship from the U.S. warehouse. So if you have Amazon Prime and want it a lot faster, it'll cost $150 for this charger. The iSDT charger, I believe, is currently around $120 or $130 in a lot of places. So this charger, I think, is actually better than the iSDT charger, because you have higher upper end for the amps per channel. It does have a bigger screen. It does seem to have a few more features, and you can charge off of a LiPo, which the iSDT can't. So those are the things that I like. So I think it's worth a little bit of extra money that you have to pay for this particular charger. And this is basically going to be my new daily charger. Of course, I'll still use the iSDT if I need to charge even more batteries. But I've been able to get pretty much charge all my charging needs have been pretty much been fulfilled with the iSDT dual channel charger. You can charge 2 batteries at a time, or I can use a parallel charging board and charge multiple batteries using this. And with a higher upper end on the amp draw, you could charge at a higher C rate or more batteries, or you can actually charge quicker as well if I could go to a higher C rate. So those are a lot of the advantages of going to this charger, even though it costs about $20 more than the iSDT. So anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I rambled on long enough about this. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.